Well, hello, good evening, and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at AOPA's Pilot Information Center for the next installment of our webinar series. Our topic for this webinar this evening is Flight Planning, Using Future Flight Service Today. This webinar is brought to you by Lockheed Martin. For more information, you can visit their website, their really cool website, I might add, at 1-800-WXBrief.com. That's www.1800WXBrief.com. My name is Ferdy Mack, and I'm with AOPA's Pilot Information Center in Frederick, Maryland. Joining me for our content this evening is Joe Danielli. Joe is a senior engineer with Lockheed Martin and their Flight Service Station Group. Good evening, Joe.
Good evening, Ferdy. Thank you for having me here.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here. So my show notes here show that Joe is not only a guru in the flight service station area, he is also a general aviation pilot. So Joe, tell me a little bit about your flying these days.
Okay, so I learned to fly back in the early 90s, and I learned to fly up in Atlantic City, and it was really good. I was able to talk to ATC at the time, and it new, and I think I got a lot out of that. I learned in a little Tomahawk.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was interesting, and I've been flying ever since, and now I typically fly an Arrow when I get up and go.
Okay, Atlantic City, interesting, busy airport. As a relatively new pilot, I felt both awe and a little bit of intimidation as I'm standing on the ramp after I arrived and a number of F-16s roar overhead. I thought, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, it's an interesting airport to fly into and out of. I could tell you stories about being sequenced inside, in and out of them. It was quite an ordeal sometimes, but it was really fun.
Sure, and also for students in this area, it's one of the few Class Charlie airspace experiences we can take folks to get some experience before we go to the big boys.
Right.
Well, wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us here to share these tips with our members. Let's go to the next slide, and you can take it away and give us the high points.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the pilot web, but I have the opportunity, and I get the opportunity to talk to pilots all around the country, whether it's at the AOPA fly-ins, which are really cool events. They are just incredible. Or whether I'm at a university and I'm talking to their students, or I'm at flight schools, or just hangar talk. There's always something that's bothering a pilot with respect to briefings and things like that. And it's getting a 50, 60-page briefing for a 30-mile flight. Pilots just don't understand why we have to do that. And we've fixed that with our pilot web. Another complaint is, why do we, I file an IFR flight plan on a website, and, lo and behold, I call ATC. They don't have the flight plan on file.
Sure.
We have a solution for that. So we'll talk about the pilot web. We'll talk about the registration, how to register, get briefings, and file a flight plan. Okay. All right, so this is our landing page, and it's just like the telephone number. If you call flight service, you call them at 1-800-WXBrief. So we made the URL, the website address, www.1800WXBrief.com. Very simple to remember. That's the landing page. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a login button. All you do is select that login button, and it brings us to the page where, if you have an existing account, you can log right in. But for the purposes of this presentation today, we're going to assume you do not have an account. So on the bottom right there, the bottom left there, you see I've highlighted don't have an account. You select that, and that's it right there. That's all the information you're going to be required to put in to generate an account on our website. Very simple. I'll just step through these things. The first thing we're going to ask you for is a user ID, and that's going to be a valid email address. We're going to ask you to put in your last name or an organization. If you happen to be with a flight school or a club or something, you can put that in there. We have a phone number. Use the phone number that you use most to call flight service. This way it'll help match the profile that we have in the system, if we have one, to this account, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Same thing with the aircraft ID. We say it's optional, but if you use an aircraft over and over again, put it in there, and it'll help us match the profiles. Home base phone number, again, whichever, you can put a home base in there or your cell phone, doesn't matter. And then we have this CAPTCHA there. Just put it in, make sure that just confirms that you're not a robot, you are a human. Once all that is in, please check it, hit the account button, and you're going to get one of two dialogues that come back. And it's going to tell you, the first one, if we've matched your profile to the profile that we have in our system in flight service, it's going to tell you that we made that match. And what this does, it allows, or it'll take all of the information for your aircraft, for your personal information, and it'll apply it to this web account. So you don't have to put in anything. Obviously, you want to update the information and put as much information in there, but we do carry over that information. If for some reason we don't have a profile on you, we'll tell you that we didn't match one. Not a big deal. We will create one on the fly for you. However, if you think you do have a profile, you can actually create it and then call flight service, and then they'll fix it to where those accounts will match up. All right. After you select the Go button, you'll be sent an email with a temporary password. That temporary password needs to be plugged in for the first time. So what you do is simply copy and paste that password into the password field on that page there. Hit the sign in button there, and you're going to be brought to our change password page. You will be forced to change your password at this point. It's a standard password. It's 8 to 32 characters, and you have to have 3 of the 4 normal stuff: uppercase, lowercase, numbers, or a special character. And there's a bunch of rules there for the password. Put that in. Then what we're going to ask you to do is read the user disclaimer and your privacy statement there. When you're all done, hit the OK button, and the system will let you know that you've successfully changed your password. And it'll also, once you're logged in, you'll know that you are, because it'll put your whatever name you used. It'll highlight that up in the upper left-hand corner. And before we leave this page, what I want to do is just point out one thing in the account section. It's very important to fill out as much information for the user as possible. This helps us identify your capabilities in the event we need to go looking for you. And it just gives us more information for contacts later on. Aircraft, we use aircraft information, the performance of that aircraft, in a lot of our calculations that we provide on the website. And you're going to see that later on. It's very, very, very important that you put in your aircraft performance characteristics, the climb, the cruise speed, and things like that. So please take 30 minutes, 15 minutes in the beginning, set this stuff up, and then you'll get the benefits of our next generation briefing.
And that's a great point, Joe. Folks who end up with an iPad in their hands for the first time and they're excited to apply it to aviation and download one of the various electronic flight bag applications, I bet that person is going to sit in their living room or den that night and page through all the options in that app they just paid for, including all the user profile and the aircraft profile pages, to make sure that all those knobs are set so that, among other things, the system knows if I want to go from here to 1,000 miles away, how long it's going to take, how much fuel I'm going to burn. And this is no different from what I'm hearing. You need the pertinent, the salient variables so the system knows how far you can go, how long it takes you, climbs, descents, where to look for you.
Exactly. So please take the time to put that in. So that covers how to register for an account. Like I said, very simple. We'll talk about weather briefings now, and what we have are next generation briefings, and we'll get into that. So what you want to do, this is our home page. This is our dashboard, as we call it. You're going to hover over the Flight Planning and Briefing tab. Once you do that, you will click on Briefings, Flight Plans, and Nav Logs. What we've done in our system, we've given you a one-stop shop for briefings, flight plans, and nav logs. We don't want you to have to go from screen to screen and tab to tab to file a flight plan and get a briefing, or vice versa. It's all there on one page, and that page looks like that. This is our domestic mask, our form, our domestic flight plan form. And you'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner that we have the blue domestic label highlighted there. Now you'll notice the red areas that I have highlighted there, that comes automatically when I log in because I have aircraft information and I have personal information in my profile. So I don't have to take the time to put in my aircraft ID, my aircraft type, equipment, speed, so on and so forth. Again, take the time to do it.
And that actually provides an interesting insight as well. You know, on occasion, I'll call flight service from, well, I always call from my cell phone pretty much. And on occasion, when I ask for a briefing or ask to file, the briefer will say, you know, are you using, 1, 2, 3, 4 Romeo today? And the first time you hear that, it's a bit shocking, a bit surprising, almost a big brother factor, but in a good way. But what I'm seeing here is it's providing me as a training tool to train me to understand, have more insight as to what the briefer, what the specialist already might have in front of them.
Correct. And the system that you see here is married to the system that the flight service station specialist uses. So when you get a briefing for a particular route and they call up that flight plan, if it's filed, they see the exact same briefing. So what the specialist sees is what you see. So very beneficial.
Excellent.
You'll notice that we default to the current date, but we do not put in a time. That's up to the pilot. We don't want them to inadvertently put in we don't want to store something in there that may not be correct. Okay. So what I do and what I like to do is I store favorite flight plans. It's easy for me. I always go, typically I'm departing the same airport all the time. These are my favorites. So what I will do is I will scroll down and I'll select, say, Altoona to Macon today. What I do is it brings in, now if you look at this mask, you'll see everything is filled in. When you save a favorite, everything that you put in this flight plan form is saved and it's brought back into the form except for the time. Put in the time and then we're going to get a briefing. But before we request a standard briefing, I just want to show you a couple things that we can do. We have the ability to give you an Outlook briefing, an abbreviated briefing. We're familiar with those. We have a scheduled email briefing. Put in a date and time when you want a standard briefing or an Outlook or any type of briefing, and we will email it to you at that time. And if you say 8 o'clock, it comes to you at 8 o'clock. So we have the ability to, and if you put in a departure time greater than 8 hours in the future, 6 hours in the future, it will give you it'll default to an Outlook briefing. We also have area briefings for the departure, destination, and your alternates. You just click on, say, the Altoona, and it'll give you an area briefing just for Altoona. Again, everything is available to you from this page. We don't ever want you to have to navigate away from this page. Mm-hmm. What we're going to focus on today is a standard briefing. So I hit the standard briefing, and you're going to be presented with two dialogues. The first dialogue tells you, or one of the dialogues, it's going to tell you that it's generating the briefing. And we have, that, like I say, that bottom paragraph there. If you're flying outside the U.S., we want to give you a disclaimer that you need to contact the foreign facility that you're flying into to get the latest and greatest weather from that area.
Hey, Joe, before we move on into the actual results of the briefing request, including the imagery and the plain text, which is really easy to read, we do have a number of folks asking about registration in particular on how this relates to duots, if the registration is the same or if Lockheed is separate from duots or if there's any transfer there.
From like the CSC duot?
Right.
From duots?
Right.
No, it's a separate system. We're not connected to their system at all. Separate.
Okay, so from initial credentials for login, they don't transfer, and then I have the pilot and aircraft profile. That it's all custom tailored to drive your system, so that has to be re-entered.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. We don't have any data that we can just pull in and put into our system.
Okay. Very good. Thanks.
Here's what I was talking about, the aircraft. If you don't have aircraft information or aircraft performance, we will let you know and warn you that you don't have your aircraft performance data is not in there. So the briefing that you're going to get is the times that we use the things we calculate for time are only going to be based on winds and not your climb or not it has nothing to do with the aircraft. So we give you a warning. All right, so give you a little bit of a layout of the briefing. You'll see I have highlighted across the top there that it's in tabular format. I think people are very comfortable with tabs, and you can just look at you can just look and see how the briefing is structured. We have our adverse conditions, the synopsis, the current weather, and so on and so forth. And we'll get into that in more detail as we go along. We have three main areas of the briefing itself. We call this the text pane. This is what that data is. We have the graphics pane, and that is a depiction of the stuff you're looking at on the left, what's in the text, and we draw it, if we can, on the right-hand side. We overlay your route in the graphics. And we're going to get into all of this in much more detail as we go on. And then the last section is the summary section. There's so much information in AirMets and convective SIGMETs, a lot of information that we don't really typically need with respect to where it's located. We'll draw it for you, and then we'll extract what is needed, just the phenomenon or just what that particular event is. And we'll get into that too. Upper left, you have a plain text button. I can have everything in plain text if I'd like, or coded, leave it as coded. We have our next gen view. We're going to get into this too, but you can step through. You'll notice that in this particular view, there's more than one TFR. There are two TFRs there. So what our system does, it highlights the first one, draws it over on the right-hand side in the graphics pane. Now, when I want to go to the next TFR, I hit the right arrow, and it'll bring me to the next TFR. So we step through all the different items in a briefing. We give you a summary of what that route is, so in case you just happen to forget what you put in there, the summary is right across the top. We allow you you'll see that there's icons, yellow icons. That's an indication that you have not opened that page to look at the data that's in there, kind of like a warning. You'll notice the TFR tab has no yellow icon. That means you've opened up that tab and you've looked at the data. And this is all built around efficiency. How can we make this more efficient for the pilot? You'll notice we have a 0 in the SIGMET tab. That means there is no data there. Don't bother to go in there. Just there's no data there. Don't bother. Don't take the time to look for it in there. Register for briefing updates. If you want to get an update on this particular briefing, you can click that button, and then you can select the items that you would like to see as an update, and you can tell us when you want to stop receiving those updates or when to start receiving those updates. And we have the ability to either email this briefing to you or print it out, standard stuff. The graphics pane, I just want to touch on that a little bit, and then we'll get into the briefing itself. We display the route for you. If there's one thing that comes out through this whole presentation, it should be situational awareness. There's nothing better than looking at your route and the phenomenon on that route, the AirMets, the SIGMETs, the convective SIGMETs. It's good to read them, but seeing exactly where everything is located is paramount.
Just a question there. We didn't touch on corridor width yet. So the graphic we're looking at right now, first of all, the red rectangle, that's merely an artifact of the presentation.
Correct.
So that's just a highlight that we're showing our viewers to indicate which part of the graphic we're referring to. However, if you look near the aircraft on the left side of the route, for example, over in central Texas, you will see an oval-shaped dashed rubber band around that flight route, and that's our corridor, right?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about widths and the implications of that corridor.
Got it. These, first of all, everything on this website, when you hit that standard briefing, it's a legal recorded briefing in the eyes of the FAA. So, and what they ask us to do or tell us to do is it has to be 25 miles either side of the flight path. So it's a 50-mile corridor. And everything that shows up, or everything that's contained inside that corridor, will be presented to the pilot. That's the information that builds that briefing. Is the information that's inside that corridor. And like I said, it has to be 50 miles. You can make that corridor bigger if you want.
For informational purposes.
Right. If you want to get more information for things that are, that's a heck of a front moving through. If you want to expand that corridor to get some more information on surrounding areas, do that. But we will not allow you to make it smaller because it has to be 50 mile wide.
Great.
We give you the ability standard to zoom in and zoom out on that particular graphic. We allow you to pick different types of background maps. I like the terrain and color map. For some reason, I just like to see the terrain in the area. It gives me a quick visual if I'm going to be near mountains or whatever. We give you legends, and you'll see up in the right-hand corner, that's for radar, composite radar, and we give you a timestamp of that particular radar. And the legend is down on the bottom there. We also allow you to configure this panel any way you want to an extent. We give you the choice of the different types of imagery that you can overlay on that route. It doesn't have to be the mosaic composite like I have. It can be anything you want, the visible if you'd like. On the bottom half, the auxiliary layers, we have the ability to put nav aids and routes and military routes on there, RC boundaries, the center boundaries if you need them, and your sectionals. So you can configure this map pretty much any way you want. I just highlighted the ability to animate. We can turn on that cell, that front, and you can see how it's moving. We give you the ability to pick some supplemental weather. Some of the graphics panes, the products that we have up don't support supplemental weather, so it'll be grayed out. I think that's it. So now we get into the meat of the briefing. And this is our next generation briefing. We do what we call automatic time analysis. What you see there is an airmet, and there's a lot of information on the left-hand side in the text of that airmet. But most of it is describing where it's located, a bunch of fixed radials. I mean, yeah, I can take a sectional and plot those if I want, but why not let the system graph it for you, overlay it on your route, and then on top of that, I'm going to tell you when you're going to enter that particular airmet and when you're going to exit that airmet.
I think that's the truly insightful piece here, absolutely.
Again, situational awareness, and it's red. You see that it's red. If it's red, that means that based on your aircraft performance, your characteristics, the winds aloft and the time you're leaving, if that's red, that area is going to be active when you're estimated to be down there. If it's orange, it'll be active within an hour of your flight time, and if it's green, it'll be active outside of an hour. So if it was yellow, then you would say, okay, let me take a look at those times. Do I want to, if I think I'm going to be 15 minutes late, and it helps you decide if you want to make this trip or not. As a VFR pilot, I'm not making this trip. But
I've got a very timely question. Is this information on that airmet or SIGMET available in plain English?
Yes, it is. If you go to the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that plain text box. I can't move my mouse here because I don't think you'll see the mouse, but in the upper left-hand corner of that pane, you'll see plain text. Click that, and now from here on out, every tab you go to will be in plain text. So it's what we call a persistent box. You click it, and it'll be in plain text from there on out.
And I think it's also worth mentioning, even despite the plain text flag on or off, the upper left box where I'll call it the play button is, where it says 1 of 2 airmet. Right below that, you've got a plain text summary right there that's very easy to read.
It is, and I'm going to highlight the summary at a later point in time, but Ferdy, you're absolutely right. If you read underneath It says summary, and it says moderate turbulence below. What we've done is we've extracted the data that you need as a pilot to know about. I don't need all those fixed radials. Tell me what's important about that airmet.
Right.
Very good.
It's like listening to HIWAS from 50 miles northwest of XYZ.
Can you really plot that in your head? I mean, think about that. So we do this time analysis on the items you see up there: TFRs, airmets, SIGMETs, convective SIGMETs, center weather advisories, and severe weather. Okay. We do something very clever, and it's METAR summarization. If you call flight service, and we have a group of individuals in flight service, these guys and gals are just tremendous. They go through more training than you could possibly know before they can even sit down and take a call. How they know how to just look at this stuff and summarize it is beyond me. So we sat with them, and they told us what needs to be done, and then we have these really talented group of engineers and developers, software guys, that build these things, and you go, holy crow. But what they've done is they've taken algorithms that actually will summarize a route. A specialist doesn't read off all 20 of these METAR stations. They summarize your route for you. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We take those 20 METARs or 15 METARs, we draw a yellow box around that particular grouping of METARs, and what we do is we give you a summary. We don't give you 20 stations to read. We give you a sentence or two up top, and what we do is highlight the worst conditions in that group. So you know you have low IFR conditions, ceilings as low as 100 feet, and you have visibility at a quarter statute miles.
You're already increasing my comfort level as a pilot, not comfort that I'm going to make this flight, but my comfort level that I am more accurately understanding whether or not I should go.
I don't know. I like to read a sentence or two versus 20 METAR stations. If I want to, if I really want to know about some particular station, I can go down and read it. Mm-hmm. But as I'm getting briefed, this is what I want to know at a high level. And we give you a legend down on the bottom that describes or explains what those station colors are. TAF, time analysis. This one, to me, is one of the most beneficial items, features that we came up with. There is a tremendous amount of information inside a TAF. It's good information, and it tells you a lot. The hardest part, at least for me, is to determine which forecast time period I'm going to be in as I'm going through my flight. Well, I can do that, and specialists look at this stuff and go, yeah, you're going to be here, you're going to be there. As a pilot, I can't. So what we do is we have a system that does it for you. I'm going to be passing Palmdale at 6:49Z. I'm going to be passing Ontario at 7:0, whatever the time is there. The system is calculating this information for you, and we're highlighting the particular forecast time period you're going to be in. In Ontario, it's going to be marginal VFR conditions when I pass it. We have the last one here that I have highlighted is Riverside. I think that's March Air Base. You'll notice that you're passing it at 7:05. It's going to be marginal, and then there's a plus 55 down there, and it's IFR at that time. If you're going to be in the next forecast time period within an hour of your flight, specialists are required to give that to you. So what we did is we translated that to this website. So if you're going to be at Riverside at that time, if I'm there and up to an hour late, I am now going to be in IFR conditions. And I point that out to you in the graphic on the right-hand side where that right side is now red. So I've made the transition from marginal VFR into IFR conditions if I'm maybe an hour late.
I have to give a call out to Daniel, who's on the wire watching this evening, who just gave you some major props, Joe.
Uh-huh.
Daniel says, love, all caps, love the TAF time analysis. Best feature ever.
Daniel, I'm telling you, when we put this in the system, this is what pilots really, really like, because it's just calculating those forecast time periods is a horrible thing to do.
Yep.
I'm glad you like it. We talked about smart plain text translation, and that's really what we do. And it comes into the summary. So I have this convective segment, and good information in there. A lot of header information, right? I don't really need header information.
I can't even understand it all.
Well, and I complain of a lot of pilots. And there's a lot of fixed radials in there. So what we do is we draw the convective segment on the right-hand side there, put it on the route of flight. We then extract the data that you need and put it into the summary section, making it very clear. And we tell you what time you're going to enter and exit it. And at a glance, you know exactly where that convective segment is located. And in that summary box right there, you know exactly what that phenomenon is, what the event is.
I found this slide to be interesting because it comes back to it's a callback to us talking about the corridor. Okay, so the graphical representation of the convective segment is not crossing our flight path.
Right.
However, it is intersecting with our corridor, our flight corridor.
Right.
So even though we're not expected to literally fly dead through it, it may have an effect because it's within our corridor, so it was still made germane by the system and brought up to our attention.
Wonderful point. And like we tried to explain before, if it happens to come within that corridor, we will show you everything. And that's a really good point. It doesn't have to physically cross the path as long as you're in that corridor. Area forecast. This is another. It's a filtering capability that pilots have been asking for a lot. And when I'm at seminars, I'm at schools, especially on the East Coast, I'll throw out a quiz question here for the pilots, and I'll say, what's unique about this particular flight from Lynchburg in Virginia down into Mount Airy in North Carolina?
Can I blow my own horn?
You know the answer, go for it.
I got it right in the rehearsal.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'll let you do
No, go ahead.
The problem with this flight is if I were using a more traditional weather product source, this means I'm going to have to look at two separate area forecasts. I'm crossing an area forecast region boundary, right?
That is correct. I would get an area forecast for the Northeast all the way up to Maine and the Southeast all the way down to Florida. I'm literally going from Virginia to North Carolina. I used to make this flight a lot with my son. And why do I need an area forecast for Maine? I just don't get it.
The only thing Maine and Miami have in common is they start with M and they're both 5 letters.
There you go. I didn't even think about that. But the point is, we give you the areas that you penetrate. And you say, well, why do I see West Virginia and Delaware? Well, that's because that's how the National Weather Service breaks down this particular area. I cannot break this down any further. If I go up and you see that little button up there for the next gen briefing, if I hit that button, it brings me down to North Carolina, and the North Carolina would be highlighted at that point. But that's it. There is no more information. Now, if I really want to look at all the information from Maine all the way down to Florida, you see that next gen button up there? If you deselect next gen, first of all, we're going to warn you and tell you that this is the worst thing you possibly can do. But if you really want to read all that data, go for it. I highly recommend that you put it right back into next gen view because you're just going to be bombarded with data you just don't need.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Ignore that next gen button up there. We should remove it. Filtering for winds aloft. I filed this particular flight plan at 9,500 feet, 95. And you'll notice I'm flying a what? I'm flying an arrow, okay? So do I need winds at 53,000 feet? I just don't think so. So what we do is we give the pilot the ability to filter everything beyond 2,000 and 4,000 feet below his filed altitude at 2,000 and 4,000 feet above his filed altitude. If you want to see all the way up to 53,000 feet, that's fine. Just deselect that button. But what we do is we interpolate between the standard values. We calculate the winds at 75 and 55, and we calculate the winds at 11.5 and 13.5. We also give you the standard values, the standard winds, because that comes for free. But the point I'm trying to make here is I don't need data up to 53,000 feet. And I'm not. We're trying to make very clear is we're not trying to take the thinking out of this. We're just trying to make digesting the data easier and more simple. That's all it is. I don't need all that stuff. If you want to see it, then just deselect that button.
And you're not making me interpolate. Okay, you give me 6, 9, and 12 as my standard weather product. If I have to interpolate halfway in between those at 45 or 75, that's one thing, but you're going to make me interpolate at 95? No, you're giving it to me.
Right, exactly, because you would have to interpolate 95 and then 11.5 and then 13.5, so we take care of that for you. Another filtering aspect are obstruction notams. This is a very short flight from Blacksburg down into Charlotte, another flight that I would take. There's a lot of obstructions there. And I'm glad that we're able to see them, but when I'm flying at, say, 9,500 feet, I don't need to see obstructions that are down at 1,000 feet. I mean, if I'm that far off my altitude, something else is wrong. So what we've done is we've color-coded first the obstructions. If an obstruction is within 500 feet of your filed altitude, we'll color-code it in red. If it's within 1,000 feet of your filed altitude, we'll color-code it orange or yellow. And if it's beyond 1,000 feet of your filed altitude, we color-code it black. That's a great visual in itself. What we do is we also give you the ability to filter out all the obstructions that are beyond 1,000 feet of your filed altitude. If you click that button, what will happen is all of the obstructions color-coded black will disappear. It will literally leave you with 3 obstructions that are within, 2 within 500 feet and 1 within 1,000 feet. Again, those are the ones I need to focus on, not the other ones.
Quick question, Joe. What if I want to take some of this with me? Tell me about what I can print.
Okay, so...
and thanks for your question, Brian.
So the best thing we're working on, there's a lot of graphics in this system.
Sure.
It's graphic intensive. We always tried to print the entire briefing with all the graphics. It became this incredibly huge thing. So what the smart guys back at the ranch are doing are coming up with what are the best things to capture for this particular briefing. In the meantime, because if you hit the print button, you're going to get the text piece of it, and you'll get an overlay of your route at a macro level. If you want to, say, take this particular screen, take a screenshot and save it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. The things that I want to save, I just do maybe a half a dozen screenshots of different items, different panes that I'm interested in, and I print them off and I bring them with me. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do. Great question. And more filtering, nav notams. Again, nav notams are incredibly useful. It depends on what they are and in what part of the route of flight you are. I'm in the en route tab, and I don't necessarily need to see ILS notams and things like that. So let me just show you that I highlighted the legend down there, and we use standard icons for the symbology. Up in the upper left there, we give you the ability to filter out what you don't want to see. If I'm en route and I'm on a VFR flight plan, let's say, I don't need ILS notams. They just don't mean anything to me. I don't know too many people that use NDBs anymore, unless you're listening to the radio.
And I've never flown anything with just straight TACAN.
Right. And TACANs, I mean, unless you're military or something, you just don't need it. So as you start selecting or deselecting these items, the number of notams, nav notams in that list shrinks. Mm-hmm. And again, if you want to see them all, then highlight them all. But it gives you the ability to focus on the navigation notams that are out that are of interest to you.
I know this is a quick rewind. Oh, you're going to cover the rest of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say at the end, we color code the particular. If it's red, it's out of service. Orange is unusable, and black is just standard. You have a question?
Yeah, it's just a one-slide rewind, but regarding back to the obstruction notams.
Okay.
I had this question, and Brad just brought it in. Thank you, Brad. On your slide, it shows that we're going to get, we can filter down to just the obstructions that are relevant to our filed altitude.
Correct.
Does that take into account any climb or descent at the leading and trailing edge of our flight, as far as climb and descent profile?
It doesn't at the time, but what we do is when you're, let me go back up there. If the obstruction NOTAMs are categorized, grouped, we have 3 groupings. We have a departure, a destination, and I happen to be in the en route section of it. So if you're within 10 nautical miles of your departure, any obstructions, they are highlighted in your departure tab.
Gotcha.
If you're within 10 nautical miles of your destination, it'll highlight those obstruction NOTAMs inside. So it's not really taking into account your climb or descent, but it's identifying an area 10 miles around your airport.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers your question and it helps. All right, let's move down to, graphics. The PIREPs. This is one of the best things a pilot can do for another pilot, is put in a PIREP. I think the most difficult aspect of a PIREP is trying to visualize or understand where it's located. So what we do is we graph all the PIREPs. You'll see that I happen to be on number 2 of number 4 PIREPs here that are inside the corridor, and we highlight it with yellow, and we rubber band or we wire band the particular thing, but it's spelled out for you in plain text, and you can read exactly where it's located, but more importantly, you can see exactly where it's located with respect to your route of flight. The other thing I wanted to highlight is we do highlight urgent PIREPs in red. Those are obviously a little more critical. It could be a low-level wind shear, something to that effect. So we highlight those in red.
All the coffee pots fell off the drink cart. Yep.
Yeah. And you'll notice where you say, well, how come I see PIREPs that are outside my corridor? We do that right now because there are not a lot of PIREPs in the system. When the system becomes overwhelmed with PIREPs, we'll probably, do some filtering and things like that. But right now we just thought, okay, there's not that many in there, so we'll just show them all. One more aspect of briefings, pilots would ask, so, I just got a briefing 2 hours ago. All I'm looking for are the major changes to that briefing. So we do. We give you what is called a Delta briefing. This provides all the information with respect to adverse conditions, any adverse condition that has changed from the time you previously filed. It will highlight it in this tab. That's not to say you shouldn't or go through the rest of the briefing, but the point is we've pulled out a separate tab called Delta, and it gives you the information, the updated information. Let's see. All right, good.
So, Joe, we on a few pages there, we saw some check boxes for filter selections. For example, don't show me any obstructions below a certain relevant height. Also with the nav NOTAMs, don't show me TACANs, don't show me VORs maybe. A couple people, Paul, thank you. Daniel, thank you for your questions. Folks are wondering, when I make those filter choices, are they persistent? Will those unchecks stay till the next briefing, or will they stay until the next login?
No, we'll default it back to everything because we don't want to make that assumption.
Sure. Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, we wrestled with that. We really did. We know NDB NOTAMs are probably going to be deselected all the time, but it's not I don't think it's incumbent upon us to make that decision. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's the decision we made, and it's very simple just to go and select or deselect the box. So,
okay. Usually once you get comfortable with the system, you have a rhythm, and that becomes part of the flow. Right. Okay.
Good question, though. Okay, I wanted to throw this in here. We're doing a lot of proactive work with unmanned UAS, unmanned aerial, unmanned aircraft systems, and we're calling them operating areas. So we're getting a lot of concerns from the pilots. There's a lot of UAVs out there flying around. How do I know if I'm going to be near one? Well, what we've done is we've started graphing them for the pilots, and we've created a tab called UOA, which is simply a UAS operating area. Nothing that's fancy for that's where it's drawn right there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just like an adverse condition, it's technically not an adverse condition according to the FAA books, but we will calculate the time that you're supposed to be near that, that area and outside the area. So we treat it like an adverse condition for you, and we plot it, and we draw it, and we tell you if you're going to be near it. And we color code it just like we would an adverse condition. One other, there's one that is number 3 of 7 of these operating areas, and these are live actually.
So for those folks who UAS, or more importantly UOA, is a new or relatively new concept, or TLA, 3-letter acronym.
Oh yeah.
Where is this UOA information coming from?
Two places. Fantastic question. So all pilots are familiar with the airspace Notams. We have unmanned aircraft Notams in the system.
Mm-hmm.
They're in there. What we do is we graph them. If it's graphable, if it's in a format such that our system can read it and graph it, that's exactly what you're looking at right here. We also give operators the ability to enter an operating area through our system.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do that, it'll also appear on this layer. So one from a NOTAM that's already in the system, and one from an entered area by a UAS operator.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And the other thing, we have a nice overlay of, it just gives you a nice depiction of the operating areas that are currently in the system. And right now we have the ability to look at the UAVs in the CONUS, over Hawaii and Alaska. We will probably be expanding that to other areas, but we wanted to start with the places we own.
All right, so we're moving on to the next segment here. I wanted to throw Joe 1 or 2 more relevant questions to the segment that we're finishing up here. I want to make sure, me personally, I want to make sure that as many people use this system as they can, and that people are clear that they can use this system. And what I mean is, for example, Paul is asking me, if I'm going to shift to fly under light sport rules, can I still register for this service?
Absolutely. This is a free open service. You're a pilot, you want to log in, register for an account, have at it.
Good, good. Also, I don't have the name here in front of me. I will in a moment. But another question was, I'm interested in using the briefing tool. Can I do so in a practice fashion, as opposed to creating these briefings where FAA is involved? And there's no reason I can't just go in and brief till the cows come home,
for
right?
Briefings?
Right.
Yeah, you're fine. If you want to go on and generate a briefing just to see what you're, training,
right?
Have at it. As long as you're not filing flight plans, the FAA doesn't, is not concerned about that. But if you're just getting a briefing and looking at weather, that's fine.
Which is no different than if I go into the system with a legitimate need, create a briefing, and the outcome is, well, it's a no-go.
Right.
I'm not going to fly.
Right.
I might do that twice a day, every day, until the weather suits my needs.
That is correct.
Exact same. It looks the same on your end, Joe.
Right.
As anyone else who's jumping in for any other need.
Yeah, we don't treat it any differently. So yes.
So use it.
Oh yeah.
Use it. Check it out.
Yep.
Change the variables. Run it again.
Right.
Jump through the tabs.
Well, that's the only way you're going to learn.
Precisely.
Yeah. All right. So let me move into the last segment, and it's this should go relatively quickly. It's pretty straightforward, very straightforward. And the first few slides are identical to the briefing. Why? Because we created one-stop shop for briefings and filing flight plans and nav logs. Again, just click on that, and it's going to bring you to the flight plan maps. So this time I brought you to the ICAO form. We're getting a lot of questions on ICAO. The buzz is that the FAA is going to be moving to all ICAO flight plans pretty soon, and I guess what I want to leave you with, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we have our system helps you file ICAO flight plans. We give you the format of each of the fields. We give you these magnifying glasses to the right of the of the field. If you click on that, it will literally give you the options you have that are available for that particular field. The three that are most painful to pilots, and even to me when I first started using them, was the aircraft equipment, the surveillance equipment, and the other information field. Those are just daunting. It's just not what we're used to seeing. Click on that on the magnifying glass, and it will give you the choices for those fields. And in the other information field, there's a lot of subfield elements that can go in there. Don't be afraid to use them. Go in there, and we will format it correctly for you. Put the information in there, and then we'll jumble the things around into the format that they have to be. So you'll see that. I guess what I want to leave you with is, once you do this, save your flight plan as a favorite, and all of the information is saved. Your emergency radios, your survival equipment, your jackets, the aircraft equipment. Do it once, save it, and you'll never have to enter that information again.
So two things on ICAO there, Joe. One is, Robert, thanks for your question. ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization. That's the standards by which, in general, every country would, should, and could abide. Mm-hmm. There are certain exceptions or exclusions. For instance, things like ELT compliance, right. Some ADS-B compliance facets, where not every country does exactly the same thing. Right. But it does explain the idea that, you know, this is where everyone should move. Right. And an example of that is the flight plan. Also, Joe, you brought up the aircraft equipment and surveillance equipment boxes. After our rehearsal the other day, I went in and drilled down into those magnifying glasses boxes to see how it works, and it's pretty cool. I mean, you just read down the list. Yes, there are some acronyms in there, but we as pilots, we see acronyms like ILS and VOR, we become accustomed to them, and it's just a big row of check boxes. I've got this, this, and this in my airplane. Hit OK. The next thing you know, the aircraft equipment field is stuffed with the proper letters in the proper order. It's actually really cool, and the real takeaway there is it's making one of the facets of the ICAO flight plan that causes the most heartburn to be much easier. It is. And all the other fields are okay. They're just a slight formatting change. And hover over the field name, and it'll show you how to format it. All right, so back to the domestic form. Again, this is exactly what we had before. Again, with the date and time, I'm going to select my Altoona to Macon flight. And you'll see that, again, everything is brought into the mask. I have it preset at 1600Z. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to file that flight plan. Before I file that flight plan, after I file that flight plan, I can hit something called return flight, the button that says return flight plan. What that does is it reverses the route for you. I don't know too many people that go somewhere and don't come back. So if I'm gonna, it'll take Macon and put that in the departure field, and it'll take Altoona, put it in the destination, reverse the route of flight. We leave certain things blank, like the altitude. We don't make the assumption, because when flying east, it's one altitude, west, it's another altitude. But the point is, hit that return flight plan button, and it'll format a new flight plan for you. So I hit the file button. Now, one of two boxes are going to display to you. If you filed a VFR flight plan, it's going to tell you that you filed it successfully. If you didn't put in the right information, it's going to balk at you before you can even file. So we do some, checking on the flight plan itself. But this tells me that, yes, I have a flight plan that was successfully filed. And you'll notice that I have easy activate and easy close. These are features that are really, really cool. We send you emails to activate and text messages to activate your flight plan, and easy close to close your flight plan. I'm not going to get into them. That's going to be in actually our next webinar that we do. I'm going to get into some advanced flight planning things. But go on the site, and all the information is there for easy activate and easy close. If you're filing an IFR flight plan, we will let you know that center has accepted that flight plan.
if you don't receive this message that or you sign up for notices, if you don't get an email saying that center accepted that flight plan, you know to call flight service, figure out what's going on with that flight plan. So, all right. So I'm on a VFR flight plan, and I want to activate it. I can do that right from this website. Once I hit that activate button, this dialog box is going to pop up. And it's going to give me the ability to activate 30 minutes in the past or 30 minutes in the future, or at the current time. The reason we put the 30 minutes in the future, we don't want you on the end of the runway trying to activate a flight plan. You're sitting on the ramp. You know it takes you about 20 minutes to taxi out to the hold line and get up in the air. So you can add 20 minutes to this, hit the OK button, and then it's going to tell you that you're on an active flight plan. What we'll do in flight service, our system will hold that flight plan for 20 minutes, then open it for you. So if you're not ready to activate, don't activate. You can activate 20 minutes in the future, 15 minutes in the future, or if you're sitting at the hold line, you can hit the button and you go.
But once you hit the button, the clock's ticking.
And that's a really good point. I mean, yes, this saves you time from, calling in to activate your flight plan or going off frequency to call flight service. These are all efficiency things. Once you click that button, your flight plan is open. Search and rescue timer start. So due diligence. Don't hit that button until you're ready to go.
Even though, in my mind, it was a rite of passage for the student pilot to have to learn how to communicate over a VOR and open a flight plan. We're in a more modern era now.
I like to say everybody now communicates with their thumbs on the phones. They really do, right?
Across the dinner table, no less.
I'm telling you. So this is what the pilots are asking for, and that's why it's in there. So. And all I wanted to show you here on the home page is that we have a listing of your proposed flights. You file that flight plan, it shows up in your proposed flights list. If you had an active flight, you activated a flight, it would be in that active list. If you had a scheduled email briefing, we talked briefly about this. You can schedule an email briefing to be a briefing to be emailed to you at any time in the future. Set it up, and then you can cancel it if you want. You realize I'm not going to go anyway, so let me just cancel it. Or you can amend it and change it. These are just some little snapshots I took of the different things on the website. You hover over the flight rule. It shows you how to format and when it's required, how to format that particular field. Same thing with the route of flight. It gives you a quick visual, little description of what that route of flight will take. Down on the lower left, the aircraft color tells you how to format the aircraft color. See what else? Incomplete or invalid entries. That's a dialog that will pop up if you happen to put in an invalid entry. And if you look in the center of the form, you'll see that I put in an invalid date and I did not put my time. And the reason it was an invalid date was because I put a date in the past. So if I wanted to file this button, that dialog would pop up and warn me that I did something wrong. The little red box there just shows you that you click on that and I can decode what DEN is, and if I want to change that, or if I didn't type it in correctly, I can type in whatever I want there and do a search right from that page for a particular airport. Two things I want to leave you with. One is we're working with a number of vendors integrating with us to file flight plans, request briefings. It's a service, and you can read all of the vendors that we're working with up there. The green check box means they are actively integrated, and yellow means that we're testing with them actively. The net here is if you don't see your service provider up there, send them an email and say, hey, I saw this really cool pilot web demonstration. But the bottom line is we are integrated with these service providers. And if you, like I said, you don't see yours there, send them an email. And the last thing I want to show you or talk about are these how-to videos that we are putting together. We got this incredibly talented young man out in Prescott who puts videos, these helpful videos together. And one of the best ones he's done so far is the ICAO flight plan. Log in, it's a YouTube video. Look at it. It's worth the 10 to 15 minutes that's there. You can start and stop it whenever you want, but I'm telling you, he has the innate ability to express and get across very clearly what needs to be done in these YouTube videos. So, with that, I would like to close.
So, speaking of YouTube, before we move on, I'm trying to pull it up now. I did find that the ICAO flight plan video on YouTube the other day, but I don't have it here on my laptop. Do you happen to know how I can easily find that?
The link right there, 1-800-WXBrief.com. When you log in to that homepage, those will take you right to the website, right to the videos.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. It looks like I found a little bit. The YouTube user account that those videos are sitting on, if you want to search that side, the account is called Lockheed Martin Flight Service, 1-800-WXBrief.
Right.
And that video is sitting there, and I have already checked it out. And
pretty cool, isn't it?
Very helpful. Absolutely. All right. So let's delve into a few of the questions that we have queued up here. A couple folks are concerned about multiple aircraft in their account. So, for example, can I store multiple aircraft if I fly 5 different flight school airplanes or FBO airplanes?
That's a really good question. Well, if you're an individual and you have, a couple airplanes yourself, that you can put in as many aircraft as you want. We have a feature when we have a number of flight schools using it where we actually share a profile, where, say, one person will maintain a master account.
Ah, you're getting ahead of me. Good.
Okay, so is it okay to address it?
Yeah, the other half of the question was, what if I have 5 people that all fly the same airplane?
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what you can do is you have one person be the master, and he creates a master account, flyingclub.com, and that person puts in the 5 aircraft, all the characteristics, and what that person does is gives the other people access to his account, to his aircraft. There's a place for it in the website, in the setup area, the account section. And when I set up the account and I give Ferdy permission, Ferdy now has access to all the aircraft that I put into that profile. You can't change that master profile. You can change anything you want once it's pulled into your flight plan form. But the master never changes. You have access to all those aircraft, all the favorite flight plans associated with it, so you don't have to enter all that information in. It's there.
Okay. So I use that aircraft profile, and I get a briefing, and then I file a flight plan. I filed the flight plan tonight. I'm flying tomorrow. Well, tomorrow I decide not to go. I've filed. No, I haven't picked anything up. I haven't opened anything. I haven't activated. I have no clearance. Can I just let go?
That's good. VFR, we'll hold those till 2 hours after departure time, and then if you don't pick it up or open it, it'll disappear out of the system. IFR flight plans, as a courtesy, you probably want to cancel those because what they're doing is allocating airspace for your flight.
It's a slot in time and space. Absolutely.
So cancel the flight plan. If it's I've done it. I filed IFR flight plans and have inadvertently forgot to file them, close them out or cancel them. It's best to cancel them out.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not triggering search and rescue, but alternatively, what we're doing is
it's the NAS. It's the National Airspace System that we're trying to help.
The boy who cried wolf. The next time you need a slot in time and space, you want it to be there, right?
Yeah.
So what about IFR flight plan activation and/or cancellation?
We do not activate electronically. We are working on electronic clearance delivery and things like that. But at the moment, we do not support an electronic activation of an IFR flight plan.
reasonable. It's more complicated.
It's an ATC event, so,
Right.
and we just have not created that hook yet.
Right, right. Let's see, other questions. So one of the things a briefer might tell me off the top on the phone, their specialist might say VFR not recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the briefing here online somewhere?
We don't have something that jumps at you and says VFR not recommended.
Okay.
This is what I do as a pilot. I go through my briefing, I look at all my data, and if it's unquestionable that it's a VFR flight, if I'm going VFR,
mm-hmm.
I'm good. I'll file my flight plan, activate it, and I'm gone. If I see something in that briefing that I'm not comfortable with, I will call flight service
mm-hmm.
and ask them for a read on that particular event.
Sure.
I'm not a specialist, so I still rely on specialists to help me out when I need them.
Okay. Also, there's quite a bit of interest to know if it exists, if it will exist, if there's any plan as far as an app, tablet app, mobile app, phone app. This is amazing stuff. The browser's good.
Yeah.
I see you smiling, so I'm hoping you have some good news for me.
Well, we made a conscious decision
Okay.
not to compete with the app vendors that are out there already. They're just we interface with them. We ask them to come and integrate with us. So what we do is like Navigator and ForeFlight, and we give them the briefings. They'll file their flight plans through us.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give them the briefings from us. So it's one of those things we did not decide. We decided not to compete with that market share.
Okay. All right. Finally, as a show note, folks, lots of people asked at the front of the show and now at the tail end of the show, is this presentation available in any way, shape, or form once we're done? Absolutely. If you've already signed up, of course you all have if you're listening live right now, once the presentation is completed, the system will digest the content and then send you a link that you can use to watch the presentation again and again, and you can share that link with your friends. It'll also be posted. I don't have any notes yet on where this will be posted online. Inevitably it will be as well. But the attendees right now, you will be able to have that content available to you for the foreseeable future to replay. It merely won't be live. That's all.
Right. Can I add one more item? We are going to have 2 more of these webinars, and what we're going to do is we're going to move forward. Like we talked about basics today, registration, filing, and briefing. We're going to talk about some advanced flight planning capabilities that Lockheed Martin has in this system. So that's what we're going to be talking about over the next 2.
Mm-hmm.
So you think this stuff is cool? Wait till you see our advanced capabilities. It's really neat. So
wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. Well, Joe, thanks so much for joining us to share all this really cool stuff, to put it plainly, with our members.
It was my pleasure. It's great to be here in Frederick, and it's AOP headquarters is just, you guys are just very hospitable, and this is great. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. And also to our viewers this evening, thanks for joining us as well. If you have any aviation-related questions, by the way, as part of your AOPA membership, please do contact our Pilot Information Center staff on the questions on this or any other area, Monday through Friday at 800-USA AOPA. That's 800-872-2672. Then press option 2 on your phone. Or for all those app-friendly folks out there with their tablets and iPhones and iPads, and I'm guilty as well, I'm one of them, email your questions to us as well. You can email us at pilotassist@aopa.org. And finally, don't forget to check out our website for news and content on this and other areas at www.aopa.org. And usually that's where I sign off, but let me give one more plug. How do you get back to Lockheed Martin's pilot web portal? 1-800-WXBrief.com. Check it out. Thanks. We'll see you.